and the meeting will be posted to the town's YouTube channel.
So we're going to wait till 7:30 by the clock on the, at least my computer, a couple minutes from now.
I'm going to go ahead and mute people who are not members of the WPCA until time for public comment.
So it's 7:30. At this point, all the WPCA members that I think are coming are coming. So I'm going to officially start the meeting for the Town of Old Lime's Water Pollution Control Authority, September 15th at 7:30 p.m. This is Rich Prendergast, the chairman, speaking. In attendance, we have Dmitry Dolchinsky, Doug Wilkinson, Frank Chen, James Burge, Joe Carpentino, Rob McCarthy, Steve Tsunami, and excused tonight is Andrea Lombard. And we have a new member, an alternate member, Randy Nixon. This is his first night. Be gentle to Randy. He was appointed, since Andrea Lombard is absent, I'm appointing him to a full voting member status. Before we go into the things, I just thought it's appropriate at that point to explain a little bit about Randy, and then explain and offer Randy an opportunity to make his voice known, as well as maybe say a little bit about himself. I'm putting him on the spot. What Randy was appointed was the way this works is the Board of Selectmen appoint members as the selectmen see fit. They consult with the chair, myself, which amounts to they let me know that they're doing it. From what I understand, having a brief discussion with Randy, he is a town resident for many years. And what I'm interested in is that he has a business where he does pipes and pipe repair, and he's a corrosion expert. And part of our sewer projects involves managing the pipes through a station that adjusts the pH and corrosivity and reduces calcium sulfate for hydrogen sulfide gas, well, to reduce corrosion. And it's part of the requirements we have with neighboring towns that are going to transport the effluent. So at this time, I did enough warm up. Randy, would you like to make your voice known and tell us a little bit about yourself? A very brief little bio. You don't have to go through all your experience, but what you think is relevant.
Sure. No, I'll be glad to. And thank you all very much for the opportunity to be on the commission. And I look forward to working with each of you. As I said to Rich the other day on Saturday morning when we had a quick chat, I plan on doing more listening here early on than talking. So I'll keep this very brief because I want to get up to speed. But I'm in the corrosion and materials engineering business and have been for 36 years, 42 years in my career. And a very big part of what we do is about 65% of our business is in water, wastewater, and so my expertise is in corrosion, largely in biogenic sulfide corrosion and wastewater. So, I've got a lot of experience with selecting pipe materials and corrosion protection measures and methods for both the internal side and external side.
Okay,
of that
so
pipe.
when this
don't know what
happens, I
that
think
noise
somebody has their microphone and their phone on at the same time.
is. Gotcha.
So I don't know who, but it went away. Go ahead, continue, Randy.
Yep. No, that's not me, but so we work for small, large, and medium-sized cities all over North America, helping them select piping materials for force mains and gravity sewers, and helping them design corrosion protection, both internally and externally. So both the soil side and the external side, and we've got a lot of experience in the pump station side of things. I don't profess to be an odor control expert, but I've got good experience with chem treatment in terms of reducing odor and corrosion in wastewater. So having said that, I'll shut up and let you conduct the meeting. But I'm here to try to help the team in any way that I can and help the town. I don't have any preconceived notions of anything other than trying to be helpful to the team, and that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Randy. So now we'll go to the item. We did item 1. We'll do item 2, approval of minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from August?
I would approve. I would make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Okay. Can I get a second?
I will second it.
So Doug made a motion and Dimitri seconded. Open for discussion now. Any corrections, changes, comments, concerns about the meeting minutes from August? I'm not hearing any, and I'm not seeing anybody waving their hands. So let's call a motion to vote for this motion to approve the minutes from August 18th, 2020. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. I'm not going to count the votes in this case because I didn't hear any nays. I'm going to say the motion was unanimously approved. Moving on. Thank you, everybody. The next item is item 3, budget update and expenses. And I'd like to hand the microphone over to Doug, and then I wish to make a couple of comments because I think I have some information that I haven't been a chance to share with Doug. So Doug, would you like to make a comment about invoices received and budget?
Yeah, just a quick comment about the budget. The only bill we paid last month, well, we paid Jennifer. So we got to keep paying Jennifer. That was the only bill that hit the budget. I think Rich was going to talk about as I signed on tonight, I saw 2 invoices from Shershman Shapiro for legal work associated with the old line WPCA, which I'm assuming is valid, but I think Rich is going to talk about those.
Yeah.
Other than that, we really don't have anything going on with the budget. It's kind of early. We haven't spent any money this year, other than we did pay comedy for.
So what I wanted to comment on was before I open it up for comments from the WPCA staff or members, is I've had a discussion with the first selectman, and I would just want to make sure that we have all the bills are appropriate from this legal, because the details, that particular counsel works for the town and works for the WPCA. We consolidated legal so we could reduce costs. So, and Mr. Tim Griswold said, you're right, we should just make sure these are all correct. Either way, the amount of the bill was like $2,409, and another bill was $462 since August. So we have plenty of money in our accounts, our bucket account for legal for that. But I just want to check before I sign off on it with Tim Griswold, because some of the things he knows of that I'm not familiar with.
And Rich, just to make sure the members know, if it comes to be that these are legitimate expenses, they will be charged to the carryover that we had from last year.
Correct.
You won't see them hitting. My point of saying that is next month you won't see them in our current year budget. They'll be part of the carryover report that I have.
A lot of the legal is related to the cost sharing agreements, the public notice of the cost sharing agreements, the discussion with the IMAs, with the neighboring towns, those type of legal expenses, which we've been working on for a while now. I would say maybe years. And I think in general statement, Doug, you could agree that's the beginning of our budget, so we have plenty of money. There's no shortfalls of anything like that.
Yeah, our budget's in really good shape.
Yeah. So does any of the WPCA members have questions, concerns about the budget or expenses? I'm not seeing any waving hands and I'm not hearing any. So we're going to move on to the next item. So item 4, mainly part of our business, just to give you a pre-show of, we've got a number of things that I'll give an update on, and I'll stop. You can ask questions about. And then we're going to have a review of the sewer ordinance gap, which will probably be the majority of what we spend time tonight on. So the first item was the Soundview Miscellaneous Area B status of the cost sharing agreement, the IMA, Lima, New London. So the cost sharing agreement status has not changed. The check is written out for the initial joining of the cost sharing agreement. Both sides agree. It's ready for signing. There's no requirements left to do on that. It's all ready. The only reason that it hasn't been signed is in discussions with the Selectman's office. It thought they wanted to do, proceed with an easement where the private beach associations would be allowed to put utilities in the ground. And that's a little strange because that is not really part of the WPCA. That easement is between the town and the private beach associations. They've asked me to participate in those meetings, and I've done what I can do to help. But it's not exactly related. In the future, when we join the cost sharing agreement, those easements, we will be using some of those easements. So, if we actually were doing the pipes in the ground, the town would not need an easement, because you can't give an easement to yourself. But that's the update on the cost sharing agreement with the private beach associations. Before we move on to the other ones, does anyone have any questions, WPCA members, questions or concerns? I'm not hearing any, so I'm going to move on to the status of the IMAs. The IMA with East Lyme, I thank Frank Chan for reaching out to East Lyme and making arrangements to have a discussion with them. This is a continuation of discussions he's had in the past. We don't expect any problems with East Lyme, but we have a planned meeting sometime in the future. Try to get on their schedule. The IMAs with New London, it was reported that New London passed a motion to amend the existing IMA per the request of the private beach associations to include the volume that we need for the Soundview Miscellaneous Area B project, and that they're writing up the legal, I guess, amendment words and the amount. We're interested to see what that amendment looks like, to see if it meets what we intended, because we've had discussions in the past that were all over the place and then kind of settled down. I haven't seen it, and I will promise to follow up directly with New London or with the private beach associations to see if they've heard anything. This is a little maybe strange because we're requesting the private beach associations in New London to amend the document. So we've had direct discussions with both, but not all three together at the same time. That's the way they like it. So does anyone have any questions about that IMA or the East Lyme IMA?
Rich, I have a quick question. Randy here.
Sure.
Just information for me. So when you say volume, is that the volume of discharge of effluent to the system?
That's correct. We have to give an estimate of how much we're willing to pay. So we give an estimate based on our engineering study and maybe some adjustment for what we think we need. We're allowed to increase that volume to a certain amount, but as we increase, we have to pay for it. So obviously the best idea is to pay for what you think you're going to use, because there's no problem or negative if you have to increase it, you just have to pay more. And we're running on an estimate at this point. So I hope that explains it. Maybe I went too much detail.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's perfect. Thank you.
Rich?
Okay. Yes.
Richard?
Yes, Steve, go ahead. Yes, Steve, go ahead.
I don't know if the agreement has changed much, but there is somewhat of a not a fine, but you have to buy in certain blocks. I think the lowest is 10,000 gallons, or
it's 25,000.
It's 75,000.
No, it's 25,000 blocks.
I'm sorry?
It's 25,000 gallon blocks.
Okay, so it behooves us. I think it behooves us to try to get as close as we can at the beginning, on the estimate, because you don't want to be buying 25,000 blocks. I forget what the cost is, but you may only need one more thousand. You may only need 1,000 gallons, and you have to buy 25. So you're better off trying to get as close as you can to the beginning.
Well, we are, and I'm confident that the amount we're going in is got a bit of a safety factor built into it, and the way they measure it twice a year, and they average that, I think we'll be okay. So,
okay.
And the thing is, the first couple of years, there's no penalties to buy extra volume. You do have to, if your average is that you're well above what you actually said you are, there's the 20-year span that you have to cover, the tie-in fee that might adjust, but it was designed so when it's flipped the switch and you turn it on, the first year adjustments don't kick in like penalties. But if we wait 5 years and then want to add in, then there's a penalty, and the penalties are defined to cover the cost of money increases. So, it's like, instead of saying a 5% increase each year compounded, it's like $5,000 and $10,000, and it's really insignificant when you look at the big picture of what you're doing. Now, when we get the IMA amendment, I'm going to share all that with you guys, with everybody on the committee. I shouldn't say guys, all the persons. But it's not appropriate to share it at this point because it's not done yet. It's just a concept. So we agreed, but we've had some discussions where we agreed, and we come back and talk to them later, and they come up with a different numbers. But eventually, the plan is we're going to get it ready for signing, I'm going to have a discussion with everybody. And I think we've had at least one executive session where we talked about the components. And it'll stay draft form in an executive session until it's ready to be signed. And it'll go from there. So any other questions? So I'm not hearing any other questions. I see our Wood and Kern representative, Jason Jankaitis, is on. And we're getting into the next one, which is design review considerations. And design review considerations, there's a couple things to talk about there. At the last meeting, we had a discussion and a presentation from Jason. Jennifer, could you unmute Jason just in case I say something wrong and he needs to correct me? So thank you for supporting us, Jason. I know it's, way after business hours.
Oh, no problem. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. So two of the things, the first thing was part of our design, if you look at the map of the Soundview miscellaneous area B, the B part is like a T. And we had a discussion about moving pipes effluent from those sections on the top left and top right to go to the center and then down to the Soundview project would be problematic, where it would need possibly grinder pumps or electricity to move the effluent, versus having those pipes connect to the other sewer systems from the private beach associations and just gravity feed down. And obviously that's what we want. On that subject, I have not approached the private beach associations with this because we've had some other discussions that were higher priority. But those discussions have finalized and complete, and now I'm ready to ask them, and I will do that this week. And I have no idea what the outcome would be. To me, it seems logical. One of the issues is measuring the effluent from our project into their project, because that's one of the things we do. And I'll ask Jason to comment if he has any opinion on this. The company I work for does insurance of equipment, and we put sensors on everything. And so to me, it seems like we'll be able to put sensors on these things if that is the stumbling block. So I'll ask Jason if he wants to comment from an engineering perspective about putting sensors on these pipes and if it's practical or possible.
Right. Thanks, Rich. Yeah, there are a couple of different options we identified. I think, one option, possibly the simplest option would be to, if they're on public water, use actual water usage, because that's already being measured. Some of the properties, especially in the northeast corner, are on private wells, so that's not an option there. The issue with possibly metering wastewater flow is it's more difficult than measuring drinking water flow, because the pipe varies. A drinking water pipe is always full; it's always pressurized, and a wastewater flow in the middle of the night, there's zero flow. So it gets a little expensive to meter. Single properties, or if you're only talking about 3 or 4 properties. But yeah, it certainly can be done if an agreement can't be reached.
Okay, so I'll approach this with them, with the private beach associations, and because I suspect they might have the same issue with some of their properties, and so we have to probably come up with some kind of solution. The second thing was we have to identify the private drinking wells in an area as a way to comply with the Department of Health requirements and it's also in our ordinances that we're proposing tonight, that any sewer line within 25 feet or 75 feet has special considerations to minimize any leaks or risks and that kind of thing. So we've gotten a suggested potential private wells from our Connecticut Water Company, who has a list of property owners that are not buying water. Either they're not a customer or they're a customer and they don't use any water. And it could be that the house is not being used. It also could be that they're not using Connecticut water. So I need like a volunteer from the WPCA to go through this map, then identify the houses, then talk to the health department to say, look up these particular properties to see if there's any information about private well. And I'm wondering if there's a volunteer in this group that would agree to do this. I think this amount of work is maybe an hour or two of work plus an email or two or a phone call. Any volunteers? Anybody step forward? Frank Chan's waving, but maybe it's someone will give someone else a chance. No offense, Frank, just that you're doing other things.
This is Rob. I'll take a shot at it.
Okay, thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. I don't think it's that bad. I'll send you the file I got from Connecticut Water, and then basically it's look at the GIS and say, here's these houses, and write them down and send them to Ledge Light and say, you know, can you see if there's any private well permits on these?
Okay.
Now, this kind of relates to this section of the agenda because Jason was also asking that we start meeting with the task group, which is different than this meeting, but it's also reported publicly. It's 24-hour notice, and it'll look like this meeting, just it won't be. And I guess basically, Jason, if I could put you on the spot, what are some of the big items that you need to meet with the task group on? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look into the records to see who agreed to the task group, and then I'll probably lead that task group, at least get it started, to see what we need to work on. But Jason, could you comment on?
Yeah, I think it would just be going into the details of the design as we progress from preliminary design into final design, the detailed design. And you just brought up a great example of the homes that are on private wells. How do we deal with those? And what considerations do we want to include in the design? So that's something we could get into a little bit more detail in this focus meeting with the task group.
Okay, very good. So I'll do that offline and then report it. And if anyone listening at home wants to participate or listen in on to that task group meeting, it'll be posted on the town's website for meeting, the meeting thing. And anything that happens in that task group will be reported back and summarized in this meeting. So you can keep listening to this meeting if you like, or attend both. The idea of that is to have more of a dedicated time just to work on those problems.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Randy.
The task group, very quickly, is a task group for design.
Correct. So, well, it's right now. You may not know. Jason is from Woodard and Kern. He's the engineer tasked to communicate with us about the design, and he's building a design document. And at this point, I think it's a draft, and it had some typos and edits and some question marks. So the idea is the task group would work with him to solve those question marks. And it could be stuff that's, you can go this way or that way. What do you guys want to do? So.
Understood. I was just trying to understand that. That might be an area where I could be helpful. So.
Okay. Sounds like a volunteer, Randy.
Yep. I'd be happy to help.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Is there another question or comment? Okay. I was going to move on to the next item. So the next item is 4A3, which is benefit assessment updates. There's not much of an update. We did get from the assessor, the Town of Old Lyme's assessor, the miscellaneous area B, some properties were refreshed. So we'll add those to the list. I really haven't just looked at what's different. But you know, when she says it's changed, then you know, we'll add it to the same list. There hasn't been any other work on the benefit assessment update to date. This will come back once we get some of the design parts done, because obviously we have to have this done before the construction is finished, but it's not the highest priority at the moment. There has been no meetings from the benefit assessment task group. So does anyone have any WPCA members have any questions about that item?
I have a question, Richard.
Yes,
If you
Dimitri.
remember, we were supposed to come back to Area B and reassess the benefit assessment.
I don't know. What I was referring to is that the town assessor has a list of properties in miscellaneous Area B, and she sent me a new list. Well, it's the same list. She said some of the items have changed, which I assume, and I don't know, is the properties, somebody did something, added a building, got rid of the building. I have no idea. Is that what you mean, Dimitri?
We were talking about that there was supposed to be, you're supposed to look it again. And you were willing to do that.
Yeah, well, we're always going to be looking at the benefit assessment. We have a plan, we have an estimate, but we're going to be looking at it again and repeatedly, because as the costs come in, we change estimates to actuals, and then that cost is spread out. So that's the thing that I had. I don't have anything specific more than that.
Well, we were based on the square footage and the commercial properties. I think it's not supposed to be looked like that.
Well, we have a plan, and the commercial properties we said will have to be looked at differently. You are correct.
All right.
And whether it's square footage, but it's how it's used, because the square footage is based on traditional residential use, while commercial use, you could have a big building and that doesn't, have a lot of people going to the bathroom in it because they don't have any bathrooms.
Yeah, that's what I think about.
Yeah, agreed. So
Right.
restaurants, churches, storefronts, we have all that in our area, and we have to properly assign that. And there's a technical standard that gives you an estimate, and we basically have to right size the technical standard estimate to the residential estimate. And obviously want to be fair and even as best as possible.
I agree too. So,
Okay. Any other?
Richard,
Yes. Is there any other questions?
I have another question, I guess. Maybe I missed it, but how is our hired assessor doing?
Our hired assessor has been gathering information, and part of that, our miscellaneous Area B refresh has to redo some of the work that he did. So he's gathering information.
All right. When should the subcommittee expect to be able to review some of that information?
I haven't been pushing them because we haven't had a need for it as for priority. So I'm not in a rush, but I also am in a rush for the IMAs and the cost sharing agreement.
Right.
So we got the cost sharing agreement done. The IMEs are next, and maybe I should explain. For us to get our funding, we need the IMAs and the cost sharing agreement signed.
Right.
So that's the highest priority for us. Because we don't get that, we can't get our funding letter. But if we don't have the EDUs or the benefit assessment done, that doesn't affect funding at this point. So
Okay.
it's for me, and maybe I should have explained that to everybody earlier. I'm sorry if I misled you. So the benefit assessment consultant has started, but hasn't finished. Any other questions about this? benefit assessment item for a triple I. Okay. Moving on to the next item, which is review of the sewer ordinance gap and the state requirements update. And we hope to have a discussion on this, and I can share the document if we want to, Frank. And Frank's been the architect of this, but the idea is I'd like to get a motion to proceed to public comment, which not public comment for this meeting, but it's we put this document out, and there's a prescribed legal advice that tells us posting the document, which actually is not required, but we have to do public notice of the document, then have a hearing, I believe. And we plan on publishing the document so everyone can take a look at it. So Frank, do you want to take over the microphone and talk about reviewing the document and see if anyone has any edits or concerns, which I think is a nice discussion point, and then we can call a motion. Because I think that might be more helpful for discussion. And we don't end up messing up our motion by having the motion and having discussion and then having the motion not meet the needs of the committee members.
Okay, thank you. It's Frank Chen here. I sent out the first draft about 2 months ago and then incorporated several comments and sent out another copy last month. So you should have some time to look at it. I received one comment since August 18th, actually came in today from Jim. So I did some research on it and look at the, this is on the hazardous material. There were, Jim mentioned there were supposed to be 8 of them. And the document doesn't include selenium. I look at what the DEP sent me. They did not have that either. And I look at the other several different tanks. They don't have selenium in the hazardous material limit also. So, so I'd like to give Jim the time to voice his opinion on that.
So just to, in case I didn't hear, it's the amount of selenium. And we have a table in there, and the table has a concentration parts per million, but it doesn't list selenium, does it? Is that what I understood, Frank? Is that correct?
And the original document that's sent to us as a template from the state doesn't have it either. And I, after Jim posted his comments today, I checked with several different towns ordinance on municipal sewer. They all have the same table.
Yeah, just curious. I mean, it's interesting because in the body of the ordinance, it talks about the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act.
Mm-hmm.
And part of EPA's toxic metals, selenium is listed. I'm surprised they don't have that in their documents.
Well, maybe it should be.
That's possible.
Now, if we were to add it, do we have a substantiated resource that says what the amount should be?
Well,
not just, Rich's idea or Frank's idea or Jim's idea.
Well, there are a couple of, if you look at, let me pull up. Section 22 alpha -426-9 is the CT Connecticut DEP's water quality limit. This is on page 42, numerical water quality criteria on micrograms per liter. So it's 10 to the minus 6. Listed selenium as 50 micrograms or 0.05 milligrams per liter.
Just parts per million.
Say again?
Milligrams per liter is parts per million.
Yeah, that's right. The same is they're usually they're both listed next to each other. So it's 0.05 milligrams per liter, or 0.05 parts per million, which is consistent with the limits of the other hazardous materials, hazardous metals. So
Correct.
the EPA standard is actually much higher, so I wouldn't use that.
So I don't know when the reason that was driving us to do this is what the state told us we had to have this, and they gave us a template of what had to be in it.
Yep.
And selenium was not in it.
No.
So to meet our goals with the state, we're fine. To meet our goals, if we think that we need to put it in, I don't know any hazard of, any harm to put it in. I don't know of any waste stream that's going to have selenium in it that people are going to complain about. I'm not trying to remember if selenium, where it comes from, as far as from a natural byproduct of waste streams. I mean, semiconductors, but I don't think anyone's doing any semiconductor building in this neighborhood. There's no industrial applications like that. So I don't know. We could add it in. We could not add it in. I'm not really sure.
The process of adding it in is a 30-second job, but so I do have a reference from the state on RCSA. Let me share the screen on this. Screen. Okay.
Could I comment?
Yeah,
sure. Go ahead. Is that Steve?
I would recommend using the least restrictive criteria. So therefore leave this out. But that's because if it becomes a problem with the state in the future, they're going to add it and make everyone else add it anyway. Why would we go above and beyond what the state is requiring? It's just going to cause problems for us, I think.
Well, the state document actually listed 0.05 milligrams per liter on water quality.
So they listed that, but in what they told us to do originally didn't include it.
I agree.
Right. So don't include it. If you don't include it, we don't have to meet it.
Yeah.
Once you mention selenium and put it in there, whenever it changes, you'll have to meet it. If it's not included.
So Frank, we could see your screen a little bit, but the file table, see me too much. You can expand that file. We're looking at your desktop.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Steve, to cut you off, but I thought it was important.
So I guess my only thing is, if it's not required, I wouldn't put it in.
Hey, this is Rob.
I can see that.
I'm going to agree with Steve on that, if it wasn't in that template document, that if we just, pick a number, whether we do believe its basis is okay or not, it's just really could open us up to problems down the road unless we have a good reason for it.
I don't think this rises to the level of emotion to change these things. So I'm not inclined to have a motion on this. And you're sharing your screen, a picture of me, which is disturbing. So Jim, do you have any strong objection? I mean, you noticed this issue.
I mean, if the state's not listing it and there's no liability for us not listing it, then that's fine.
Okay. Well, we the way this works is we send out public notice and we take a look at it, and at the same time we're sending it to the state and for their blessing. So if something comes back later on that requires us to change it, we change it then. Yeah. And that's regulations how it's going to be. So I think we're just going to move on this topic to the next one. And Frank, I had at least one thing to talk about, but do you have more things that you got feedback on that you want to talk about, or changes or edits?
No. Are we planning on a motion to proceed with public notice tonight?
Yes, we definitely need to do that.
Okay.
Whether it passes or fails, we definitely need to do that. But do you have any other items in this that you need to bring out or discuss?
No.
So I was going to bring up, and I probably shouldn't, but what about section 5.4C, which is garbage disposal grinders? Right now, it currently says it's okay. I talked to Wood and Curran offline, and they said it's not a problem. The sewer system can handle it, although it tends to gum up the works. And septic systems, you can't really use garbage disposals because it kills the septic system. Right now, the ordinance has it in it. Does anyone feel a strong objection to keep it in or take it out?
I mean, if you say you can't use a garbage disposal, how are you going to check that?
Well, you say it in the regulation. We're not going to have an inspection force to look at that, but we do put it in our organization, and we put it in the reference. There's a lot of things in this that we're not going to be able to, police, so to speak.
Right.
I mean, one of the big benefits of having public sewer is the ability to have garbage disposal.
Fair enough.
Right.
Fair enough. So with that, I just wanted to bring that up. I guess I'm not hearing any, anyone that's really opposed or against it. So I'll move on. And I think,
Richard?
yeah, Dimitri, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think you should put in ordinances that it should not be drained to the sewer or sump pumps.
That's in there already. There's and there are, you talk about policing it. If someone did something wrong and we found out about it, there's fines available, but you're not allowed to construct, repair, connect, unauthorized connections. So that's in there. And what Dimitri is talking about, I think, is we don't want to process rainwater because that's expensive rainwater. And, just we don't want to do that. Any other comments? All right. So I'd like a motion, and I'm going to paraphrase, and you can adjust it to whatever. A motion to proceed with the sewer ordinance update with a public notice of the change and go through the process of adopting these updated ordinances. Something like that. And so can I have a motion similar to that from somebody?
I can make a motion to adopt it.
Do you want to spell it out, Dimitri?
I want to make a motion to approve ordinances draft that was prepared. That's my motion.
Okay. I'd like to add that we're not adopting those, but we're starting the process of adopting those with public comment.
All right.
Because there's a special legal process of going through public comment to adopt ordinances for the town of Old Lyme. And we want to do that, follow that.
Yeah.
So do you accept my amendment?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Can I have a second?
I would second that.
So I'm not sure who got first to that. Was that Jim or was that Randy?
Randy can have
Well,
Okay, Randy's the second.
Whatever you like. I just
Okay.
think it makes sense. I read it very carefully, and I think it should be subjected to public review. Sure.
Okay. So Jennifer, do you have any questions about the motion, wording and all that? Okay. So at this time, is there any discussion about this motion? For it, against it, questions? I'm not hearing any questions. So now I'm going to call and I'm going to poll, if you don't mind, because this is an important motion. And there might be someone that may object, and it's perfectly fine if you want to object. So I'll start off, and Jim Birch, are you for or against this motion?
I'm for.
Thank you. Frank Chan, are you for or against this motion?
I'm for it.
Thank you. Doug, are you for or against this motion?
I'm for it.
Thank you. Joe, are you for or against this motion?
I'm for it.
Thank you. Dimitri, are you for or against this motion?
I am for it.
Okay. Let's see. Rob, are you for or against this motion?
I am for it.
Thank you. Randy, are you for or against this motion?
I am for it.
Thank you. Steve, are you for or against this motion?
I'm for it.
Okay, so that motion passed majority and unanimously. That ends that section. We're now on item 5 of the agenda, which is correspondence. Let me look at my notes of correspondence. Give me a second. Meeting planner. Okay, so correspondence, one of the correspondence was that Randy Nixon applied for the alternate, and the first selectman told me that he's appointing Randy Nixon for alternate. The other one is, people have read the stories or read some articles about a planned development called, I think some people are calling it Hatchets. And it's on Hatchetts Hill Road, which I think is a private road. And the idea is that it's 224 to 216 units, which will be affordable housing or have some component of affordable housing. And if you know something about that property, it's kind of like on a hill, and I guess the ground is not conducive to having septic systems. It's rocky. And part of that project, the developers suggest that it needs public water and public sewer. And they had a discussion with the town of Alliance WPCA, me and the first selectman, and the essentially asked if, information about putting in sewers. And there's a couple of things I want to make clear, that project is completely separate from what we're working on in Soundview and miscellaneous areas B. And that's what I made clear to them as well. The miscellaneous area B and Soundview and even the Hawk's Nest project is to resolve an administration order of groundwater community septic system groundwater pollution. And what they're talking about is economic development or developing land that currently doesn't have a problem. And they are talking to East Lyme and New London, and that property happens to be nearby East Lyme's sewer trunk. So they can connect the East Lyme sewer trunk if the pipes fit and the pressure and all that fit. And they could use their effluent to process it through East Lyme and to New London for processing. I explained to them how difficult it's been for us to come up with this agreement and how many years we've been working on, and to give them a kind of some feedback. I'm not for this or against it. It would come under the town's WPCA jurisdiction because it's in the town of Old Lyme. So we would have to be involved in some way. I don't know the component of fair housing or low income housing, if that, changes any kind of regulations that have to apply or not. And there was a comment that they thought that they could use the volume of the IMAs that we've developed with the private beach associations. And in my opinion, they cannot. That volume that we have earmarked for the Soundview, Hawks Nest, and the private beach associations of Old Shores, Old Colony, and Miami, that volume was defined years ago. It part of the project area. And even though that we're maybe contracting for the low end of what we plan on using, the expansion that we have is not to expand for economic development, which would invalidate our funding, our 25% grant and special 20-year financing, as well as we possibly could use that volume for our project area. So that's why I believe that they are looking into talk directly with East Lyme and New London. And I don't know if they realize how difficult it's going to be. So with that, that's the correspondence I got, and they asked us to have a discussion with them, and we had a discussion with the developer, who is actually Diebold Development LLC, but it's also the person who owns the land in Old Lyme. So I've just kind of talked a lot. Does any of the WPCA members have a comment or question or something to add?
Yeah, Rich, I have a question, I guess. I mean, the letter they said they're asking to connect to our sewer connection. I thought the agreement or the stipulation we have with the state for getting clean water funds is it doesn't allow any economic development.
That's correct. That is one problem. So all the infrastructure that we develop, we couldn't use. It could possibly invalidate, and we're not gonna. They can't afford to pay our fees that we're gonna lose.
Right.
I don't think it makes sense. It's in millions of dollars.
Yeah.
They could connect to the sewer line somewhere outside our project area, like on 156 or through the East Lyme, which is, I guess, across the street from where the property is located.
Right. I'm just saying, I don't see how we could allow them to connect to our project.
Yeah, and I communicated that I feel the same way. There's a lot of technical challenges.
I have a couple comments.
Yeah, who's this?
Rich?
Steve? Go ahead, Steve.
Steve, yeah. I'm somewhat familiar with this project. Not much more than you I just know but they don't want to hook into that would be insanity to hook into our project. That's not what they're asking or looking for. They're looking to hook into the nearest port, which would be East Lyme near Capitol Drive. I guess it's a pump station on Capitol Drive. There's a sewer in the back of the property that runs through East Lyme, but in the back of their property that they want to develop that is, I think they said 200 meters away. So it's not that far away. But as a whole thing, we're not, I don't believe we're threatening any clean water funds or going against any agreements by assisting someone that wants to put in 216 units in another part of town. I think part of our job is to try to assist.
But I just think we need to separate it, Steve. We need to be very cognizant and clear about separating the two. I think that's all we're.
Yeah, that's the original, the way they originally thought. They thought they could connect to us and they could use the agreements we have in place. It's a separate project, and that's lack of understanding on their part, and it's reasonable to have that misunderstanding. It's like, you guys are building this. Can you just add our stuff to it? It's like, no, it's not. doesn't work that way.
Okay, so that's my other comment. Who, if we join the beach IMA, and Old Line does, let's say 20 years from now, let's say 50, let's say 100 years from now, people don't get upset. There's sewers on Halls Road. Does that, do we buy more, or are we part of the Beach Association IMA for any place in Old Line? We buy more capacity?
Let me explain that. We cannot add Halls Road unless the private beach associations and New London agree, in which case we'd also need to up the volume beyond the initial estimate, the engineer's estimate of what we have in place now. So it can't happen. It'd be a separate agreement. And New London may someday, well, let me finish. New London may someday say, you know what? I'm going to invest some money to add more capacity. So then I go out and sell it. But when they make those investments to add more capacity, it's like 10, 20, $30 million. They have to have a buyer for that.
Yeah. Yep. I realize that. I mean, they make other improvements that are generally funded quite a bit by Clean Water. They did a huge odor control thing about 20 years ago. That was millions and millions of dollars. That was almost totally funded by economic development because Pfizer wanted to move next door and whatnot. So there are ways, but so in other words, Old Line is stuck with this IMA agreement that if anywhere else in the town we wanted to put in sewers, we would have to get separate IMA with East Line and Waterford and London.
Well, we're playing the what if game.
Yes.
I don't say stuck. I would say we have an agreement that fixes what we have to deal with. If we wanted as a town to expand and go somewhere else, there's other options. So in our original wastewater plan covers multiple options. Build a power sewer treatment plant on the Connecticut River, the groundwater behind Cherry Stones, which we tried to do, but the state wouldn't let us do. So there's other options.
I'm not talking about the current project. I'm talking about future. And what you're saying is we would have to come up with another IMA if we were to put sewers anywhere. What if Hawks Nest, for instance?
Well, Hawks Nest is in this project. Steve, Hawks Nest is in this project.
Well, it's not in the sewer construction project.
It is in the projects of the IMAs.
Rich, this is Rob. And it's based all on EDUs and total flow, right? And we currently have an IMA that accounts for a certain number of EDUs and a total flow. And that's what is controlling anything else that might connect in, correct?
Well, it also has, yes, Rob. It also has the beach communities. So the plan is the IMAs were designed to handle the problem that the administration order kicked off. And it was not designed to handle other parts of the town. And I think I can speak for a lot of people. There was not really a want to have the rest of the town sewered. So, I mean, it's not like this is we should have got a better agreement. It's,
No, I'm not saying you should. I'm trying to understand the agreement.
Okay.
That's all. Because if we can buy more capacity, why? What is in the IMA that prevents Old Line if we did want to assist? And I think it's our responsibility as a WPCA to assist them to try to get hooked up if that's what they want to do.
Well, okay. So we are going to assist them because it falls under our jurisdiction. We're not going to try to stop them or try to help them. We're being neutral on it. So we are assisting them, and the conversation to explain kind of the ins and outs, I think was very beneficial to them to explain some of the challenges and correct some of their misunderstandings, like it was going to be easy.
So who, the IMA that we have, that we're going to sign, that says we can purchase 25,000 gallon increments, more stuff, that's only applicable for the area in which we're tying in, not as a town as a whole?
It's only applicable to the beaches already named and other
Right.
beaches, other beach communities, which was the code for Soundview, Miscellaneous Area B, and Hawks Nest. And all parties have to agree. Now, the limit of buying 25,000 gallons worth, there's a limit on what New London has put aside for us.
Correct.
They're putting, they don't have unlimited capacity. So, and so they have this agreement in place. It's been in place since 2018. We're asking them to amend it. They appear to be willing to amend it because it was part of the original plan. The original plan, if you all remember, was one wastewater plan that covered all these beaches.
Correct.
And then we didn't go as fast as the private beach associations wanted to go, so they went ahead and formed their own.
Richard, may I say?
So what do we do as the O-line WPCA on a property that's already zoned? It's not like a surprise. It's zoned for that many units. It's zoned for multi-residential. I live not too far away from there. I go by it every day when I'm in town. You know, so it's a property that's zoned. It doesn't have to get special zoning. It does need sewer because it's all rock pretty much. So there's no way they can have a septic system. What do we do as a WPCA to
We would
help
do,
them get?
we have a sewer ordinances. I'm sure we might adjust this, but I'll tell you what I think we need to do. We would have sewer ordinances, which we're working on. We would define the cost and apply the cost and define the user fee, and we would manage that long term. So even though they would have the pipes in their building, the pipe leaving their building and going across the street to the East Lyme, we would be responsible for managing that. Unless, because they don't have, the difference between them and the private beach associations, they don't have a quasi-government agency status. So it falls to us to manage that.
Right. So I guess that's what I'm getting at, is that this, even though they're very, very close to East Lyme, it still will have to go through Old Lyme it's generated in Old Lyme. It's going to have to go through the Old Lyme WPCA.
Correct.
And even though, I believe most likely, it's a gravity line, there's very little, the infrastructure is minimal. I mean, it's a couple hundred feet, but it's still going to, it's still going to generate costs. It's administrative. We have to maintain it. There would have to be user fees. So, I mean, obviously all those things have to go into it. And then apparently we need another IMA.
Well, they're having discussions because at this point we are in the middle of signing our IMA. So if they want, they can wait and we'll negotiate for them later. But they're having discussions. Now, if they come to us and they have all parties and they find a way to get this settled, we'll have to bring it up and have to have a discussion about it.
I mean, what I want to try to avoid is, so let's say we don't help them. Let's say.
Well, we're not going to not help them. We're going to help them, but we're not going to. We're going to have a priority of things.
I think that we should. Well, our priorities may not be necessarily the people that we serve's priorities, but regardless of that, I understand our priorities are to get something signed so that we can continue with this project. I'm not saying to derail this project or anything else, but I would hate to start seeing these semi-quasi, I would hate to see like 20 or 30 different WPCAs in our town because we're not.
Well, that's not possible because the only people, there's a handful in the state. They happen to be an old line because they were incorporated in 1925 before the state eliminated them. And the state can't eliminate them now. So, I mean, they're not going to, there's not another WPCA that I can see that can be formed. And definitely in Hatchetts Hill, there's not. So we're going to help them as best we can. But, this is a preliminary, and let's also take a step back. I just found out about this like 2 weeks ago, and I just had a discussion last week. So this is really new, to me at least. Maybe not to other people.
Richard,
but this is what you're going to have to expect when you have a WPCA. I mean,
I'm not shirking responsibility. I'm just saying I'm reporting correspondence.
I understand.
Dimitri, you tried to say something a couple of times. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I tried to say a couple times, and I think, Richard, you're on the right tracks. First of all, DEP gave an order. Our WPCA working on this order, and those people who are going to build multi-family buildings over there, they want to make it with us, but that should be a different issue, like you said. It should be they should go and try to get from the East Line, Waterford, New London agreement and on their needs. And when they come and get it, they'll come to us and they will get it through them without our doing this for them. They want to develop it, they can develop it. If they get approval for their needs from New London, which is, I doubt they're going to get it soon, and I'm afraid they're going to interfere with us, and it's going to just delay our work. I think you're right saying this, that they should go on their own before. We are not going to and we are say yes to them.
Yeah, we thank you. I think there's going to be more to come on this, and we're going to have more discussions. And it's not just the WPCA. They're talking to the first selectman's office, and I'm sure they have to talk to zoning. And you said they're approved, Steve. I'm not familiar with any of the approval, and there's a whole bunch of things they have to get done.
The lot that they're talking about is already zoned for multi-residential. I didn't say they have approval for what they're proposing. I'm saying
there was someone else tried to develop this.
They don't have any zoning approval for anything. They just have a lot that is zoned accordingly.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So I just, it's important that we have this correspondence and we have this discussion, because I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea that we're stopping or that we're helping it or, expanding sewers and that's all our plan to do. That's not the case at all. This came out to me. I wasn't planning on this, and it just happened, and we'll respond accordingly. So there's going to be more to come on this, and I'll keep you all in the loop. And as you know, from a WPCA point of view, we're not going to be anything that we do for this. We'll have a discussion about it. Any other comments? That's the only correspondence I had. Unless I got correspondence within 24 hours on my the town email, I wasn't able to check it this afternoon. Any other questions about this correspondence? Okay. Moving on. We're in item 6, the new business. Any WPCA members have new business to bring up? Hearing none. We'll move into public comment. At this time, give a little for those who are listening. I think the people that are in the public right now, I can't tell all of them, but I think they've gone through this experience in the past. Public comment is an optional thing that we do in this committee. What we'd like you to do is to state your name, and that way we can recognize you, and we can give you a public comment. I prefer that you have your comments related to the WPCA issues, and I prefer that you if you go off track, I might ask you to wrap up your comments or be timely about it. And then after the public comments, we'll close the public comment session and we may comment about the public comments. You can ask questions for the public comment if you'd like, but we don't get a back and forth question and answer system. So at this point, I'd ask Jennifer to unmute the lines. And also, before you do that, Jennifer, if you have the phone and your microphone on your computer at the same, it'll be a feedback. So you got to shut one of them off. So Jennifer, do you want to unmute everyone's lines? So I think they're unmuted, the people that want to be unmuted. So does any of the public have a comment? And if you could, just say your name and we'll recognize you and then let you speak.
I have a comment.
Could you say your name?
Daniel Tricarico, 41 Hartford Avenue, Old Lyme, Connecticut.
Thank you, Daniel. You're recognized. Go ahead. Make your public comment.
I'd like to make a public comment. There are properties in Soundview and miscellaneous area B, which are more than 2,000 feet from the sound. There are areas within the community exclusive of this area, which are within 200 feet of the sound. This is 10 times closer to the water than areas in miscellaneous B and areas in Soundview. These areas include parts of Brighton Road, White Sands Beach Road, Seaside Lane, and Springfield Road. These areas have issues with lot size, drain fields, soil type, percolation rate, and water tables. These are glaring and obvious issues that must be addressed, which are not being addressed. Many taxpayers in town feel there's a conflict of interest within the WPCA. How will this be addressed, and who will pay for the legal expenses involved, if there are them? I'm done.
Thank you, Daniel. Would any other public like to make a comment?
Dennis Maluzzo,
Hi, Dennis. You're recognized.
7 Portland Avenue. I just have two things. The original consent decree from Deep to O-Line, when was that signed? Do you have any idea? Because I can't find it anywhere in your documents.
We don't do a question and answer session on this, so you can
Okay.
make your public comment.
All right. I'd like to have an answer. I don't care if it's from Jennifer or whomever. Jennifer has my email address. And also Hatchett's Hill. Hatchett's Hill, I was present during the presentation of the previous developer. And the original intent with Hatchett's Hill was to be a community septic system done by the developer. One of the reasons why they had said that was because if a sewer line comes into Hatchett's Hill, all the factories and all the buildings can tie into that. Now, if they can tie into it, then Vista Drive can tie into it. Then 4 Mile River Road could tie into it, whether it's the upper end towards Boston Post Road or the lower end towards 156. Be very careful what the WPCA wants to deal with. It's technically a private concern, has nothing to do with us, and there'll be a lot of ramifications if in fact it does even come close to our pipeline if you're making us pay for it. That's what I've got.
Thank you, Dennis. Any other public comment? Please say your name and we'll recognize you.
This is Mary Daly. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mary Daly, you're recognized.
9 Portland Avenue. So tonight I heard a lot of questions tonight from the WPCA, from the members there, regarding the IMAs and the future growth within the town. I know you reserved $50,000 GDPs for Soundview and Area B, 50,000 of the 180,000 that you have on reserve, leaving 130,000 GDP unclaimed but in reserve. I think it would help a lot if the WPCA would clarify why they did that. What is the extra 130,000 reserve GDP? What was it targeted for? Was it targeted for White Sands or Hawks Nest or future development? Because at this point, I think that's what I'm hearing tonight from within your group, that there's questions regarding that. My question tonight, though, really pertains more to Hawks Nest and the $48,000 that you spent last year in testing and what your plans are. I'm hearing that there are no plans. There's no expert. There's no one retained to evaluate that data. And I think it's pertinent and very important that you do so, that you move forward with that, especially as you're trying to finalize agreements with surrounding towns and you don't really have a handle on how many households or how many buildings you're talking about. I mean, I saw your last list of Soundview properties and it's incorrect. There's gross errors in it. Do you even have a list of how many properties are in the private beach communities? Have you factored in Hawks Nest or totally eliminated it at this point? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please say your name and we'll recognize you. I'm not hearing any other names, so I'm going to close public comment. And at this point, make a couple the public comment session. We really encourage the public comment to find out what the public thinks. Maybe we learn something, maybe we have a good question, something to research. But everyone that's listening to this should realize that some of the public comment we have is not actually designed to be helpful or public comment. It is a complaint. And that public comment is misleading and often misleading on purpose. And I say that because, at least in my opinion, when someone asks the same question over and over, and then the question is answered in private emails or emails from the WPCA, and they still continue to ask the same questions, it's suggesting that there's some kind of not a plan, or that the WPCA doesn't know what they're doing, or doesn't have a plan, or is doing something wrong. And I don't believe that's the case. We do have plans. We have definitely people that don't like our plans, but we're still trying to maintain the good for the entire community and be compliant with orders that we get from the state, as well as the realities of producing a plan where you have a certain amount of cost that's estimated and you have to serve a certain number of households. So with that, I invite any other WPCA members, if they want to make a comment on this section before I finish off this section. I'm not hearing any other comments, and I think that's okay. So at this thing, we'll ask for a motions to adjourn. Can someone give me a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So James had a motion to, can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you for attending tonight. This meeting is now over. If you have questions that want to be answered, and you can always send an email to Jennifer or send an email to the Old Lyme WPCA chair. We'll do our best to respond. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Rich.
Good night.